18th of August 2023. This is one of that Let's Talk Skidmarks of mine, and I'm going to talk about solar in your home. The eskom fiasco is driving people to the edge of going insane. And I have done skidmarks about it, and I'm sticking to my point. The load shedding is politically manipulated, and they do it to achieve a certain goal. And I'm not going to talk about that now. Let's talk about how we have to try and retain some presence in 2023 and not slip into the Stone Age every now and then. Now, like most people, not most, but many people, I originally opted for a UPS with batteries. Now, there was a problem for me with the UPS, and that is that I bought that thing about 7 years ago. That was before solar was a story. So that UPS, the red box, is not solar enabled. And it also comes with only 100 amp hour battery. So when the load shedding got severe, on advice from the battery guys, I put 4 batteries in, 3 on the outside, 1 on the inside. The UPS itself, the charger, was only a 15 amp charger, and that is not enough for those batteries. So they said I should get another charger, and they suggested this smart charger that cost me a lot of bucks. I bought this to help with the charging, made a big difference. But the reality is that these batteries, I have got lead carbon batteries on mine. I had, the original one had a deep cycle lead acid, but they said no, the lead carbon is better, got more cycles and all of that nonsense, and I bought it, and the first pack lasted less than 3 months, and then after a investigation they decided to replace it under a warranty. I put it in, and lo and behold, 3 months later the batteries failed again. So I was confronted with a situation: sit in the dark or make a plan. Now, solar is something that a lot of people talk about it, and everybody has got their opinions about it and so forth. Me, I'm a fanatical analyst, and my career was also, I spent a lot of time in developing computer systems, software database applications, and so my mind works in boxes. Everything must be in its box. And of any project, I've also seen that in practice happen, and for me, proper planning prevents problems. So in my mind, I first had to figure out for myself what is going to be the steps if I want to go the solar way, because it is very expensive. Now, your first thing that you must understand is, when you go the solar way, you go either just to manage the load shedding, or you try and you aim for that mystical off-the-grid position. Now, that off-the-grid position, I have spoken about it in previous skidmarks. That is a very expensive thing, and it does have its problems. The fact of the matter is, going off-grid is not as easy as it sounds. So, you look at your basic needs. Now, unfortunately, in South Africa, our houses were never wired for this situation. There was a straightforward DB with the circuit breakers and things in there, and it had to be done according to certain regulations, and that was the end of it. But then comes the solar now. Now you've got a problem. Not many people can afford to put in a solar system that's big enough to carry their whole house. That is very expensive. So most of us are looking at what they call the essential loads. But unfortunately, our DBs in our houses not been wired so that it can split. So you need to rewire your DB. And this is my advice to you. If you plan to go the solar way, step one is get your DB sorted out. And get it sorted out by a guy that knows what he's doing. If you're going to go for the cheap option, you're going to get burned. You can most probably physically burn your house down. So, don't be skimpy on that. I'm fortunate, my neighbor is a damn good electrician. And when I decided to go the solar way, I spent some time with him in planning the project. That project needs to be planned properly. And after a lot of discussions, I reached a point where I was satisfied that my project looks as follows. Number one, sort the DB out. Number two, install the inverter and the battery. Number three, add the solar in. So, step one was to get that DB sorted out, and now you want to look at this photograph that somebody sent to me of how a installer did it. Look at that. I mean, that is a nightmare. But you know what he's bargaining on? He's going to slap the trunking lids on, and nobody is going to know what is behind those things until the day that something goes wrong. And that is the day that you are going to pay a lot of money to get that little thing wrong fixed, because the foundation is rotten. Now, in the process with my house of installing the new DB, we had an accident, and this is the result. He drilled into one of the conduit pipes that goes to the existing DB. And yes, it was an issue, but my electrician is a professional and they fixed that. So we only had that one hiccup. And I'm showing you this to show you that things can go wrong. You can plan as well as you want, but things can go wrong. Now, this is how my DB looked. This is how it started. This is what Leonard had to face when he walked into my house. That was the DB. And now I'm going to show you a slideshow of how that DB was fixed. As you can see, there was a lot of work done to it. And if you look at this image now, that is the end result. That is stage one finished. And if you look at the DB board, you'll see there's 3 rows of breakers. The top is the breakers of the items that will never go onto the solar. And that is my stove and oven, and my koi ponds, the pumps of my koi ponds. Those things will not go onto the solar. And that is in bank number 1, and that is the eskom bank. You look at this, you can see clearly. Now take note of how my guy labeled my DB. This is so that if the day comes that he's not around anymore and someone else has to look at it, they just need to read and they'll understand what's going on there. Then if you look again, the middle row, That is my essentials. That is the essential stuff. That is the stuff that I need to be alive. And in the third row, we have the non-essentials. Now, the salesman of the equipment originally led us to believe that the inverter can manage this essential and non-essential load. And once the installation was complete and we started working on the inverter side, Leonard realized, but that is not true. That inverter cannot manage the essential and non-essential load. We were brought under the impression that you can set the app so that once the battery, say, reach a level of 80%, it will switch the non-essentials off. It doesn't do it. It doesn't do that. So you have to do that manually. And if you look at this image here, this is the close-up of the non-essentials. And you see there on the left is a breaker, double breaker, that red thing. It says inverter. At the bottom it says inverter, at the top it says eskom. So I can switch manually, switch off the non-essential circuits in the house. And that is what we'll have to do if the battery gets under pressure. So, yes, because of misinformation, we have got 3 banks in the DB. Could have only been 2 banks. But now I have the advantage that I can manually take the non-essentials off if I want to take them off. And that is enough for me. I'm happy with that. And then we get to stage 2 of the project. That is the installation of the inverter and the battery. I'm going to show you a slideshow of how that was done. And once again, you can see it was done very neatly and precisely. So the battery and the inverter is now connected, and it's connected to the DB. So for all practical purpose and intent, I am now back at a place where load shedding will not affect me. I've got the additional bonus now, that is, with the way it's been wired, my lights in my house are still on, and the fridges are running, and things like that. They're basically the essentials. It's operational, and it works well. The next step will be the addition of the solar. But up to this point, everything was done meticulously and done to be functional, but most important, it can be maintained. And any qualified electrician that walks in here will immediately see and know what is going on. It is important that you keep that in mind, because that original installer may not be around forever. So up to phase 2, things are perfect, and I like it a lot, and it works as it should work. And here is a graphic of the first load shedding session after the installation was done. If you look at it, you can see the house was drawing 813 watt, and the battery was supplying 903 watt, and the battery was sitting at 93%. So I'm happy with that. Once the solar is in, you will see that then the solar will feed you and things like that. This app will also indicate how much you draw from eskom. And this is where I want to talk about now, is the size of your inverter and the size of your battery. You must make sure that you don't buy too small inverter. And you must have someone that knows what they're doing to explain to you and help you with selecting the essentials that you want on that inverter. And then you buy that size inverter. And it will vary. People have got different needs, and the inverters start at 3.5 kilowatt and they go up to 16 kilowatt. So what you should look at is what is needed for your basics and a little bit of a buffer for that moment something spikes. Fridge that starts up, or a deep freeze that starts up, and things like that. I originally worked on a 5 kilowatt system with 10 kilowatt battery. But after talking to a lot of people, I realized that that is too close to the edge. And I opted for an 8 kilowatt inverter and a 15 kilowatt battery. Now, what is important is to make sure you buy proper brands. You can get a lot of these things cheap. There are cheapies everywhere. And as I discussed with somebody this morning, when you buy these cheap things, you've got two potential outcomes. The thing can work for 5 years or 8 years or what, no problem, or it can work for 5 or 8 days and it's gone. And that is the moment when the shit will hit the fan. When you hit that, dial that number, and you get that dreaded AI voice telling you, the number you have dialed does not exist. So, I have seen it with a person that went the cheap way. He got his inverter at 40% of what my inverter is costing me for the same size. But he has already blown one of that. And they replaced it under warranty, but they gave him a lot of nonsense about it, and the chances are if this one blows, they're not going to replace it. So pretty quickly, you can get to a position that your replacement costs will be more than if you originally decided to buy a decent system. Now, I have, as you can see from the images, I settled for SunSync equipment, and I'm happy with it and I'm comfortable with it, and I've got a 10-year warranty on the inverter and on the battery. So that is, I made that decision to go that way. I could have got cheaper, but I was not in the mood for that, because the reality is these things can very easily burn your house down. And don't see that as something that might not happen. It may happen quite unexpectedly, because the people they want to cut the corners on the installer, get a cheaper installer and all of that. You have a problem if you do that, because you're running a massive risk. So to recap, going solar for me was 3 steps in the project. Step 1, sort the DB out. Step 2, get the inverter and the battery up and running and let it work. Step 3, install the solar panels. Now my solar panels is here, they arrived and they will be installed next week. But I'm happy with what was done, and it was a great job. And for those that are interested, there is an option that is now available on the market, and it is a combination. It's a SunSync power bank, 3.6 kilowatt inverter with a 3.8 kilowatt battery pack and 10 solar panels. Now a kit like that will provide very basics. You run your TV and your Wi-Fi and your PC and 1 or 2 fridges on it and your lights and some lights, and it will be happy with it and cope with it. And a kit like that is around about 60,000 Rand if you buy from a reputable distributor. It's going to be about 60,000, and then you must add in what the installer is going to charge you to sort your DB out and to install the components. But that is not too bad. And for single persons and maybe 2 people living in a townhouse or something like that, I think this is a good option. You must just understand, the fact of the matter is, the only time that you are really going to get money back from your investment is the moment that you generate solar power. Because every kilowatt that you generate with that solar panels is a kilowatt that you don't have to buy. Don't forget that. That is the only time. Because the practice, what happens in practice, if you have gone through a 2-hour load shedding session, after 2 hours, and your batteries are, say, at 85% or 80 or 75%, that inverter is going to draw a massive amount of power from eskom to get that battery topped up again. So that's when you hear people say, yeah, with all the load shedding, but their eskom account has not changed. The fact is that all the load shedding does is during those 2 hours that it's off, your fridges run off, your geyser gets cold, your battery go flat and all of that. And the moment the power comes back, that fridge and that deep freeze works like hell to get it back to temperature, and the geyser works, and the inverter charges the battery like hell. So what you did not use in the 2 hours, you're going to use that and more after the 2 hours. And if you live on a farm like in my case, we've got an item on our eskom accounts called demand charge or something like that. And that is when you pull this abnormal high loads. So you pay more for that power. And that is how it works. So you only save once you put the solar panels on. But I'm going to say in conclusion, make sure you use a really reputable and qualified electrician to do the job. And don't forget, step 1, sorting that DB out. That is extremely important because that's the foundation of your whole system. In my case now, when they come and install the solar, it's only going to be plug and play. They're going to do the solar panels on the roof and all that and bring the wires in and plug it in, and everything should work. And that is important. I hope you find this information usable, but don't forget, to go the cheap way can be extremely costly in the end. And make sure you use a reputable electrician, an electrician that can issue a certificate of compliance. It is extremely important. Many of these fly-by-nighters does everything, and they do it like I showed you in that image first. They plug it up, and then they've got some unethical electricians that will issue the COC. Just remember this, the day when things go wrong, your insurance will want to talk to that guy that issued that COC. Make sure about that. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.